Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. Thank you for joining us. The Atheist Experience is live, May the 4th, 2003. This show is sponsored by Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. ACA holds weekly meetings every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. at Hot Jumbo Bagels, which is located downtown at 307 West 5th Street between Guadalupe and Lavaca, except for the first Sunday of every month when we have our lecture series in the Mayor Room of the Austin History Center at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. Now, today was the first Sunday of May, of course, but today was not a lecture series. We had officer and board elections, right?
Yes.
And who are our new co-chairs and people?
Co-chair is Michelle and Jeff Jones.
Okay. Hurrah.
Most of the other positions stayed pretty much the same, I think.
Okay.
Except for general membership, in which case that was, I think, 2 new people.
Right. Oh, cool.
Board, so.
Yeah, all right, then. Good. So our next lecture will actually be the 1st of June, and our speaker will be Don Baker, and he'll be talking on the subject of Christianity as a meme, which should be very interesting. So the lectures are pretty much open to the public, but of course the bagel shop meetings are only open to atheists and agnostics. And you don't have to be an ACA member to join, but of course that's where we meet a lot of great new folks who, many of whom decide to sign on and hang out with a bunch of atheists like us. Okay, what are the other announcements? Okay, of course, there's Godless Gamers, which takes place every Monday night at 7 o'clock p.m. at the home of Russell and Virginia Glasser. And then Thursday evenings is ACA Happy Hour, which happens at Antonio's Tex-Mex, which is located at the intersection of I-35 and 183. I'm feeling a little rusty on this. I say it so much that I'm like, but I-35 and 183 is a Thursday evenings, and it starts about 7:30 p.m., and then people tend to trickle in and out, though, all evening long. So, the table kind of grows and expands. So those are during the week, social activities. As far as some other things that ACA does, well, we have the Nonprofits. Our weekly internet radio show is coming back this coming Saturday, May the 10th. The Nonprofits, the first episode will have Jeff D. and Jeff Jones with Russell Glasser. It'll be at the atheistnetwork.com website. It's an MP3 stream, and the show will run from 2 to 3:30 p.m. Every Saturday thereafter. It'll be live, and if it's anything like last year, there will be an interactive chat room feature that will go live during the show. Oh, it's bi-weekly now.
Yes.
Radio shows every other week. Okay, thank you. So, well, that's, I guess, kind of a reasonable schedule. I don't want to ease into it. Yeah. Because of the pressure doing it every week was kind of a hassle. So, all right, so starting this Saturday and then every other Saturday after that. And then you can visit our website at atheist-community.org. See, just learn to talk, Martin. Yeah, well, I had my tongue
up here.
Yeah, there we go. Org, and the radio show page will have MP3 streams of like the last dozen or so shows that they did in 2002. Okay, so let's see. What else is there? I think that's pretty much it for just the regular weekly announcements, correct? Correct. All right, then for more information about the group, you can visit atheist-community.org and find out more stuff there. All kinds of our upcoming calendar of events, Amanda's social calendar, and last but not least, the FAQ page. There is a frequently asked questions page that's part of the website that we started up after doing this show for several years and realizing that we were getting several of the same kinds of phone calls over and over again, basic questions, and we've put a lot of those up on the FAQ page at the website. And so if you are planning on calling the show, then visit there first, because if you have just a real basic question about like atheism, what is atheism, what's the difference between atheism and agnosticism, all that kind of stuff, there it is. So, what?
Just can't resist. You've been reading from your little notepad here.
Oh, well,
about announcements and everything.
And there's nothing on it, yeah.
We have gamers and everything. It's blank.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I keep looking down expecting myself
behind-the-scenes technology at work.
Well, I'm Karnak the Magnificent is who I am. So, it's always good to have something to just like handle.
Nervous energy.
Have you ever looked, seen these, news broadcasts?
Well,
right?
you snatched things away from me.
I do?
You have before.
What?
I was playing with something one time and you tossed it away. I have lots of nervous energy.
Well,
sorry.
Yeah. Well, and you see there, and you sit there, they're sitting there reading their news reports, and they're like, right, and let's move this piece of, there's nothing on that,
Shuffle
right?
the papers around.
Because everything's on the teleprompter for them. So it's sort of like, it's like this prop for your hands.
Rearrange your stories.
Like you're actually doing
now,
something.
My photographic memory will allow you to read the next 5 minutes without looking down at my papers.
Yeah. I used to have all of the announcements just jotted down on this, and I'm starting to think that I should do that again because I'm like, okay, I want to make sure I don't trip. But, well, what have you guys? News time, right? What's happening in the world?
All right. I unfortunately do not have teleprompters.
No. So actually, he's actually reading things.
Yes, I'm actually reading stuff on real pieces of paper with actual words. First one. This is
going to be a wacky show today. I can just tell.
In Kentucky, they had a judge down there who was going to put up a big old one of those 10 Commandments monuments, big old 6 foot by 4 foot monstrosity on the lawn. The American Civil Liberties and 5 individuals, including a rabbi and 3 ministers in 2000, said that putting that up would be unconstitutional and so they shouldn't be done. Went to court. Everybody agreed with them, except obviously the prosecution or the other side. And so they went to the Supreme Court trying to get that overturned. Supreme Court has ignored it completely and said, let it stand. As in, let the ruling that it's unconstitutional to have 10 Commandments stand.
Yeah.
So their monument will not be going up.
Right. So
Yay.
So they refused to hear the appeal. Right.
Yes.
Well, I understood.
Yes.
That's...
Yay us.
Yeah. Well, it's not that. It's yay the Constitution, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Constitution is the thing that prevents these government endorsements of particular sectarian beliefs.
Exactly.
Okay? The 10 Commandments are specific to the Judeo-Christian tradition. Therefore, it's a sectarian belief, apart from, Islam or other religions that are out there.
Yeah.
And you can't have that on a government-sponsored, taxpayer-funded piece of property unless you're going to do it for every single religion that's
of course
in America. And we had that hilarious situation back in Utah with the summum religion.
That was it, the summums.
That was,
the 7 aphorisms.
Yeah, those are the guys who believe that God masturbated the universe into existence.
Exactly.
And they have this. It's you think we're making this up? There's.
It's documented.
Yeah, there's this actual little cultish religion, and I think they won. Or at least they got it heard. I can't recall.
Their monument did go up, I think.
The summum monument went up, or
believe
it was.
So, yeah.
It might be being challenged, but I think that he won the right. The courts admitted, okay, he's got a point. You have to do this.
Yeah.
And so I mean. So either we're going to have a courthouse and government building lawns that you can't even walk on, that squirrels can't even walk on for all the monuments, or we're just going to have to remain completely neutral and leave it up to citizens, which is what the Constitution says.
Yes.
Leave it up to citizens to decide what belief system they want to profess.
Yeah.
So.
And again, when it starts out at the top of the monument, the words, I am the Lord thy God, followed by the commandments, a sacred and religious text for Jews, blah, blah, blah. At the bottom are 2 small stars of David and a symbol representing Christ.
Like the one we've got.
Exactly, the one that we have, most likely.
So
because ours has all those wacky things on it, too.
Right.
So. Okay.
It says, it's secular. There's nothing religious about it. Star David, Star
I am
David
the
cross.
Lord thy God.
Yeah. There's nothing religious about that statement. Well, maybe not on your planet.
Yeah, really.
Oh.
Okay, next one. This is actually up in New Sweden, Maine. Very strange story up there.
Oh, yeah.
They had this story. It was a little while back. Well,
I think it was last
maybe
week.
like a week.
I think it was like last Sunday.
Like a week, yeah. It wasn't that long ago. At a church social gathering after church, they had some members down there doing their social thing, and it turned out that the coffee was actually laced with arsenic. One of the older members of the church actually died, and 15, I think, were sick and in hospital from it. They're trying to figure out what was going on. They said this is not an accident. It's not just, oops, that's not the sugar.
Where did I put that arsenic?
Yeah. It was deliberate. It's being treated as a homicide.
That's just weird.
Yeah, and one of the members, actually, of the church, I'm trying to find, I don't see his name offhand really quickly, but anyway, one of the members of the church, who was not being investigated, was not considered a suspect, was also found dead a day or two after he had suicide. He shot himself.
Now, have they determined that? Or he was found... I know he was found shot dead, but have they determined it was self-inflicted?
I believe it was.
Okay.
Looking over this really quickly.
Mystery deepens.
Exactly. So, well, actually, Daniel Bronson, 53, died Friday evening shortly after he was found shot in his home in Woodland adjacent to New Sweden. Police did not say he was a suspect, so it doesn't say whether it was a suicide or something like that. But
More details will unfold. This is
exactly
a TV movie in the happening here.
Yeah, it's very interesting what's going on up there. So hope they get that one.
But so far, no motive that they can figure out.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything else on it. So
yeah, could be an individual with some issues.
Exactly. I mean,
a conflict going on within that
personal issues going on. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is definitely maybe someone who has felt unfairly ostracized by that congregation or something.
Exactly. Possibly.
Very weird.
So.
Oh well. But it's again. This is a poisoning of Christians. Okay, that took place in a church.
Yes.
Okay, it's supposed to be God's house. Okay, why does God, if he is this wonderful moral authority who is the source of all things good in the universe and protects his followers, why do these weird little things happen? Okay,
why does
it
he allow
just
this
doesn't
to happen?
add up. Okay, I mean, I understand how Christians have all the rationalizations that they come up with for why plane crashes are allowed to happen or why terrorism is allowed to happen. Okay, but in a church, okay, if you're poisoning people in the church, okay,
God has right to defend his home.
Well, I mean, you would just think that if God is everything Christians crack him up to be, a church would at least be one place where you are safe from stuff happening.
Yeah.
And that, of course, once again, that would settle the issue. It would be a very, very simple matter for this all-powerful being to render atheism moot simply by making it abundantly clear that, yes, he's everything that this religion cracks him up to be. He is this being who loves you and protects you and, and sets this moral compass by which everyone can live. But if he's sitting back and, letting people be poisoned in one of his own churches, you can run into one of either two conclusions. Either God's a big fat jerk, or there ain't one. Yeah. Okay, and I think that the second conclusion is probably simply the more plausible of the two. Yeah. So, sorry. Now, again, a really bad thing that shouldn't have happened to these people.
Of course.
Nobody deserves this kind of thing, and we're not like... shouldn't make the mistake of thinking that we're like going, tee-hee, see, this is, this proves there's no God.
Of course.
But... because this is a horrible situation, and whoever is responsible, whether it's the guy who shot himself in the end or somebody else, needs to be dealt with to the full extent of the law.
Yeah.
Because you just, a civilization can't have that kind of behavior and thrive. However, still, it's the kind of thing that I think, these are the legitimate questions that are raised by skeptics and unbelievers. Yeah. Okay? And I have yet to hear an answer that satisfies me as to why this all-powerful, all-loving God would allow this stuff to just happen willy-nilly, even in his own houses of worship. I mean, there are all sorts of cases of people being, shot in churches and robbed in churches. Yeah. And there are of course ministers and of course you all know about all the TV evangelist scandals where they just rip people off of their money.
Churches being struck by lightning.
There's this practice that was going on for several years in a number of churches around the country, which is something called affinity fraud, which are church members basically coming up with these elaborate scams involving investments and things that they would direct towards other Christians.
Exactly.
And the appeal, the way they sold their fellow congregation members on investing their life savings in these schemes is they simply played we're Christians.
We're Christians just like you.
Yeah.
You can trust us.
And this is, in a Christian business, I mean, why wouldn't a Christian support a Christian business and what have you? And, so the fact that, that religion doesn't seem to be this thing that inoculates you against bad stuff.
Yeah.
And that these are why these questions arise from skeptics, and they're legitimate questions. Yeah. And they will continue to be legitimate questions until some theist meets his burden of proof and demonstrates conclusively that this being exists and this is what he does. Yeah. So, anyway, onward.
One more quick story on the solemn side. There was a string of bank robberies up, I think it's somewhere north. It says in Norman. But I'm not seeing the actual state here really quickly. But anyway, it was...
Oklahoma, probably.
Norman,
Oklahoma. Well, I know there's a Norman in Oklahoma. Now, there could be one in any other state.
True, maybe it is. Anyway, there was a string of 7 bank robberies up there, and they finally pretty much think that they nailed the guy who did it. Somebody called in and said he looks like the guy in the cameras and drives the right van and all that kind of stuff. It was a pastor of a Baptist church. Bible Baptist Church, Mr. Brown, Warren Brown. was arrested on Thursday in conjunction with several robberies. Actually, he was caught for one, but there were 6 others that they think are most likely going to be him. So, bank robbery, not good. 7 of them, really not good.
So, yeah, I guess it's just his people are being really stingy in the collection plates or something.
So, and I kind of like, too, they called some people in the church to try and get some comments on this. What's going on with your pastor?
Oh, he's a good dude.
And what they had, people at other churches, the transcript, which the paper called for comment, expressed the desire to point out that robbery is against Christian principles.
Well,
I find it strange that you have to point that out.
Well, it's against everyone's principles, shouldn't it be? I mean, it's against the principles of just about any civilized culture that's out there, right?
But just the Christians have to get up and say, we just want to remind everybody that that theft, robbery, is not part of our doctrine. So, a bit strange. Okay.
But now, have they got the guy, obviously,
yes.
the pastor.
Yes.
Have they tweaked out a motive for why he just felt compelled to rob 6 banks or however many?
No. There was nothing in the article about any of that.
Okay, he wasn't blackmailed. He didn't have alimony payments, or he didn't. So we don't know why he.
We don't know why, but
just this weird compulsion.
It's pretty much as him.
Yeah.
So
maybe it's like his way to figure out how to hand out tracts. Now that I have your attention, would you like this chick tract?
I'll trade you $30,000 for this tract.
Oh my.
Okay.
If this stuff didn't exist, we'd have to. It just sounds like. I work in films, right? Okay, and that's like a comedy pitch right there. Yeah, okay, there's this Baptist minister and he robs banks. Oh, that'll be great. We'll get Danny DeVito, and that's. But this is happening in real life,
Yeah. Okay, this is actually a follow-up story here. This next one. It was a story a couple months back, I believe. There was a guy who ran a porn store. Adult toys and books and videos and all that kind of fun stuff. I can't remember. I don't have the old story with me, but apparently God came to him and said, "That not good. Do something better." So he took $10,000 worth of adult magazines and videos and toys, burned them.
Which doesn't sound to me like he had a very big stock. Only $10,000.
Yeah, $10,000 of porn is not very much.
Yeah.
But anyway, he took $10,000, burned it all, and said he was going to open up a Christian bookstore in its place. Which he did. And the bookstore, Christian bookstore, said sales are slow. He was able to stock his shelves only after receiving $80,000 worth of donated religious goods. Ron and Phyllis Brand's letter arrived last week in a van and rental truck filled with Bibles, books, and other religious items. They dumped it all on him, and now
there's like crap we can't sell.
He said he hopes business will pick up now that he is fully stocked. Apparently, he wasn't before.
Okay.
What I find funny in this article, though, is the names of the places. First off, when it was the sex shop, the name of the place was Love World. Now that it's a Christian bookstore, the name is Mike's Place.
Mike's Place?
I'm thinking the name should be reversed. Mike Shop sounds like the porn place.
Mike's Place?
Mike's Place.
Well, yeah, that doesn't even have most Christian bookstores kind of have like a Christian-y sounding name.
Yeah, something going on, but Mike's Place.
Mike's Place.
Where'd I get my Bible? Mike's Place.
Yeah, he was fixing my muffler. Anyway. That's what it sounds like. It was... Mike's. Well, yeah. The guy needs to learn a thing or two about marketing. Now, has he had? I want to know if he's had any situation of any of his old adult shop regulars coming in the door, and they're
Holy cow!
Yeah, expecting. So what is he showing the booths now? Little Christian videos.
He's got the Jesus video going in the different booths and stuff like that.
Oy, okay. Well, Mike,
his business isn't going quite as well. Not really all that surprising, I must say.
No.
I don't think too many Christian bookstores are going to do better than porn stores. So,
Well, it is a big,
It's a big seller.
market niche,
Yeah.
right? But it's not. They tend to have their established things. Like there are like the chains for Christian bookstores. There's like the Family Christian Shop.
Yeah,
and Joshua's is a big chain. They tend to have the established retail outlets, and it seems like just like anything else, it's very hard for an independent to get started up.
Yes.
There's a place that,
especially when it's called Mike's Place.
True. Now, there's a place that I noticed. I used to live up north, and I noticed a place that seemed like it opened and closed in a week up on 183 called I think it was called the Mustard Seed, and it was in this. It was in the strip center, like right by a Half Price bookstore.
Okay.
So you would think that that they would get
overflow.
And it was like it was one of these trendy style bookstores where they have the cappuccino espresso bar in it, and it's all Christian books, new and used, and CDs and everything. And so it looked like a pretty well financed operation, and they were out of there, I think, in less than a month.
Wow.
They just did I guess nothing
Couldn't
happened.
have done absolutely anything to close down that quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very short lifespan for them. So,
wow.
So I think that Christian retail seems to be just like mainstream retail.
Yeah.
In terms of, you've got, like a mainstream retail, you've got your Best Buys and your Sam Goodies, and very difficult for a mom and pop anything, in the world of retail to keep going. And I guess that just holds just as true for Christian retail as anything else.
Yeah. Especially when you call it Mike's Place.
All right, we'll go ahead and, again, that's,
Sorry to harp on that point.
You should call it Christ's Place. And have, Jesus on the sign like,
Okay. This last one is an editorial. It's not very often that we see an editorial that's actually more on our side. They're usually typically along the lines of, this is a Christian nation, get over it, shut up.
Yeah.
It's usually the kind of message. Yeah.
And this is from a mainstream media outlet, right?
Actually, I've heard that this is fairly small. This was actually from the Memphis Times or something like that. I can't remember exactly. Unfortunately, the URL isn't on here. But it was a paper in Memphis. From what I've heard, it's a relatively small circulation. And our crack research team is getting on it just as we speak.
Okay, or he could be telling us something else entirely.
True. It was Memphis Flyer.
Thank you. So it sounds like their equivalent of the Chronicle.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe something relatively small.
Well, still.
But anyway, it's an editorialist who wrote there, and I just want to read some of this stuff because it is absolutely brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, while I'm doing that, we'll go ahead and throw the phone number up on screen.
Okay.
Go ahead. This is a live call-in show, so...
Yes.
And I think the phones work today. If you've been watching the show for any regular period of time, they've got this new phone system installed, and for some weird reason, we've had bizarre sound problems where you just can't understand people. It sounds like callers are underwater, what have you. That appears to have been, I'm told that's been fixed. We'll find out. But if, I've been frustrated. I was frustrated with last week's show because I was like, boy.
Half the calls were not understandable.
And that could have been a good show last week if being able to comprehend people. I'm told that situation is now behind us. We'll find out. But we'll go ahead and throw the phone number up on the screen to call us. I think it's 477-2288.
It is.
And what do our editorialist pal have to say?
Okay, this is called The Weathers Report and titled The Empty Box. Mm-hmm. Religion is the root of much evil. It has to be said. Here is what I believe. There is no God. There is no Messiah. There are no prophets plugged into some divine will. If there is a heaven or hell or any kind of afterlife, we can't know anything about it while we're in this life. So it's useless to speculate and foolish to believe. To believe in Christ is to believe in a rabbit's foot. Allah, Jehovah, and the Trinity are elves, Tinkerbells. They are no more than desperate hope given a name and anthropomorphic shape by the imaginations of frightened men.
Now, is this writer alive today? I mean,
I would hope so.
Yeah,
he rocks.
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, that's pretty bold to. I mean, it's for
considering it's an opening paragraph.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So kudos to him for having the guts to get out there and.
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, he's got a lot in here. It is. Did you want me to go over all of this? Might as well.
Well, it looks like we're getting calls lined up, so just maybe another paragraph or so, and.
Yep. Religion is the fortress of lies built to keep out the terrors of existence and non-existence.
Yeah. Now, he admits, right, that there are some, that religion's contributed good things to the human race, too. But overall,
on balance, religion has made the world a worse place. It has generated magnificent art and wonderful music and spectacular architecture and millions of people have done good and beautiful things in its name. Those millions of people would have done just as much good without it. But because of religion, the world has experienced centuries and centuries of backwardness and unnecessary suffering. Throats have been slit in their name, hearts exploded, and the best minds distracted or destroyed. Sweet people tortured, millions of children sent horribly into oblivion.
Now, I would actually, overall, right? I mean, I go thumbs up, but I would challenge one assertion that he made, where he says, like, all those millions of people would have done just as much good without it.
Yeah.
Now, from the standpoint of us today living in a relatively advanced, humanistic, scientific, post-scientific culture, that seems to be an easy conclusion to arrive at. I think, though, it's maybe a little bit harder to discern if that would have been the case back for primitive peoples. Yeah. Remember, in a pre-scientific, pre-technological culture, when philosophy is still in a very primitive stage, civilization itself is still in a very rudimentary stage, it is only natural for religion to arise as the way we try to explain stuff, okay? Yeah. Because when you don't know things like physics and all the other sciences, to explain where the sun comes from or why we get light or why water grows plants or this, that, or the other thing, it makes sense for that people in that culture to use or to come up with some sort of supernatural or paranormal or religious response. Yeah. And then from that, comes, how should we behave and what have you. Yeah. Now, though, as our scientific knowledge about the universe advances, and, it does happen that, God just keeps being pushed further and further away. Yeah. It used to be, in old times, people would say, well, where is God? Well, he's behind the clouds. Then someone invents the aircraft and we fly up and we don't see God. Oh, okay. Well, then he's off in,
outer space.
He's beyond the moon or he's off in space. And so then we get radio satellites and telescopes and we shoot things off into space. Where's God? Okay, well, he's now in some other dimension of time that we can't, that's spiritual and we can't access. So, the more what science has been doing is it just keeps pushing God further away as he becomes less of a necessary explanation for things. Yeah. So, I don't think that it's entirely accurate when he says all those people back then who did wonderful things in the name of religion would have done just as well without it, because they were living in a culture where they didn't have the alternative, the other knowledge. Now, today, you can say that, we've grown up a bit. Yeah. We don't need supernatural and religious explanations for things anymore. Yeah. Okay. And we understand that, there's the rational basis for human beings getting along and having a moral society. Yeah. But you can't really attribute today's understandings of things to how people thought maybe 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. Because it was a different world back then.
Oh, and, definitely.
But overall, I have to applaud the courage in just going out and expressing.
He doesn't leave anything to the imagination.
Yeah.
He's very open about his beliefs and how the world should be working and is working and stuff like that.
That's fine. And I'm sure it created a lot of debate and a lot of people sending angry letters, and there's going to be a discussion about it, and that's how it ought to be. So cool.
Yep, I sent him a note myself.
Hey, okay. Oh, you did? Okay.
Yes.
So,
I figured something like this cannot go uncommented.
Yeah.
So,
or at least he should get nice comments along with all the hate mail he's gotten in response to.
Exactly.
Okay. Anyway, all right. Well, it's time to go ahead and start taking calls, and we've got people on the line. And also, I wanted to remind folks about our viewer email address, which some of you seem to be chicken to send us stuff to. Don't be. We won't be mean. It's tv@atheist-community.org. We never get around to getting to all the calls that get lined up on the show. If you have a subject that you'd like to talk about, okay, there it is. tv@atheist-community.org is the viewer email address, and we pick the most interesting emails every week, read them out on the air. And so don't be bashful, send us something. And okay, we're going to go ahead to line one with Michael, and 477-2288 is the number. Hi, you're on TV.
Hi, how you doing?
We're okay. What's up?
Oh, I'm just really curious. I was raised in the Christian church, and, I'm just really starting to question everything. And you guys just look like you guys are just going great without a higher power, I guess.
Well, we don't rely on supernatural authority.
Yeah.
But overall, so what sort of questions have you been asking?
Well, I've just been wondering, if there is hell, what's really wrong with, following the Christian beliefs is it's a good thing. It's not like you're, doing anything you shouldn't be doing. Don't kill people, don't rob, don't steal. So, I mean, really, what's the punishment by following those rules and regulations that the religion sets on you? I mean, you're not going to be a bad person either way. If there's no heaven, then, well, you did good through your life.
Yeah. Well, see, the problem with, of course, the doctrine of hell, at least the way Christianity promotes it, is that you can, according to the Christian faith, you earn hell simply by virtue of not being Christian. And
simply by virtue of being born.
Yeah, simply by virtue of, if
we're all born into sin, you deserve hell.
And so heaven and hell were essentially concepts that were introduced to more or less scare people into the pews. It was heaven is the reward, and it's essentially a carrot and stick setup, right? It's the reward and punishment. Heaven is the carrot that they dangle in front of you, and hell is the stick. And that to me is a fear-based religion. It's about emotional responses to things, and it doesn't really address the rational basis for why people should behave well to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
do you guys have any training or schooling in your religion, or not religion, but your beliefs? I mean, have you ever taken any theology classes and things like that?
I haven't. Okay, I haven't taken theology classes, but I've read up a lot on everything independently, just on my own. I'm very, I'm just a regular guy in that regard, and we're not up here pretending to be experts on theology or religion in any way, but I think we're well read on the subject. I actually have done more Bible reading since I've been an atheist than I ever did when I was young and actually going to church through my teenage years and my adolescence up through like my mid-teens. I was a regular churchgoer. And I never read the Bible back then, it seemed like. I just read, I went through the bits that, were taught in Sunday school, but I never actually sat down myself and poured through it until the last few years when I became active in atheism. It's like, well, what does this say? Oh.
Yeah, and both of us have read a lot into Christian apologetics, The Case for Faith, and D. James Kennedy, and all the different people who are, heavy into it and explaining Christianity and such. Listen to a lot of radio and stuff like that, so may not have a theology degree, but we've definitely read into it. So,
yeah, I mean,
actually, the previous co-host on the show went to a Bible college. So,
yeah.
Got anything else for us?
No, I think that's it. That was hot. Thank you.
All right.
So,
still a little weirdness on the phones, but at least we could understand him more or less. Okay.
Yeah.
We don't have line 2 anymore, so line 3 is whoever it is. Sally is on line 3, and we'll go ahead and put the phone number back up. Hey, you're on TV.
Hello, how are you?
Just fine. How are you doing?
Great. I wanted to respond to the editorial that you wrote.
Well, we didn't write it, but
it wasn't ours.
Right, that you read.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. That you read, and something in the editorial was that society would have done just as well without the name of religion. They would have, had the same charity. And then you responded, Martin, that, well, society has evolved and it was a little bit different then. And I was wondering, since we rely now more on scientific explanations, what does that have to do with our charity?
Well, I wasn't strictly saying scientific. I was referring to scientific explanations in terms of explaining the physical world around us. Charity, a great many philosophers independently of religion have discussed ethics, have discussed morals and charity to one another. Aristotle, long before the Judeo-Christian tradition became established, Confucius, so it's been a topic that has been dealt with by philosophers, for many, many centuries, just as long as the major established religions of the world have existed. And my simple point was that one doesn't need religion to develop one's sense of, a moral compass by which to live life. However, that is the way I think a lot of cultures did it, simply because religion very early on became the governing body in those cultures. For several thousand years, right up until only a few centuries ago, government and religion were the same thing. The church and state were intertwined. And so it's kind of, I didn't agree necessarily with the way that author was quite so confidently being like a Monday morning quarterback and saying, oh, well, in the past, people would have been just fine. Because, again, when you don't have a knowledge of a modern science that you'd have today and as a result, are using supernatural explanations for the physical world around you, then it only stands to reason that those sorts of explanations would apply to other aspects in your life, like how one develops, what morals are all about. Well, God says you do this, so that's why you do it. That's just how they came to their conclusions about things. And then as society and civilization developed, we found out, well, no, the supernatural explanations for why the world is the way it is, we don't really need those anymore. But there are plenty of examples in ancient literature of philosophical writings where, where authors were not using any sort of a religious or supernatural authority to back up ethics and moral behavior to one another. So, hopefully that's a little more clear, or maybe I just made it a lot less clear.
Yeah, I guess it made it more clear that you split up science and philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Philosophy is not an area that science really deals in at all. I mean, science is all about exploring and coming up with conclusions about the natural world through observation and experimentation.
And that's not the reason why we would have more morals today.
No, I think morals are a philosophical issue, and it has to do with. Although I do think it has to do with a very practical matter, which is how does a civilization work? How do you make a society and a civilization work? Either it's through cooperation, or it's not through cooperation, with everyone just behaving in a manner of complete anarchy and going wild and working only in their own self-interests and the heck with everybody else. And obviously that isn't how it works. I mean, it doesn't work that way. If human beings didn't cooperate, we'd all be dead. So there are practical reasons why people getting along with other people, it just makes sense. It's the thing that works. I've had discussions with people who are anarchist in their views, and Jeff Day and I were talking about this too. It's sort of like, look, even if the anarchists were right and all governments were abolished one day and all laws went away and everybody could just do whatever they want and there was no sort of guiding, a principle of morals by which to govern culture, what would be the first thing people would do?
Set up the laws.
No, well, they'd organize, right? They just try to organize and try to, at least how do we make stuff work? That's just how people are. So,
but let me get this straight. Did you believe that earlier people did not have as many morals as we do now?
Well,
they have changed over time to a certain extent, but it was not an anarchistic society back then. They still it may have been on a smaller level, different, if you, depending on how far back you want to go, different tribes would kind of get together and, work out their thing.
They would have a lot of customs though, wouldn't they?
A lot of customs, that type of thing. But again, that's just how they set up their culture, how they set up how they're going to work in their society.
Okay, so morals and such have changed, but they haven't gotten any better or any worse.
Oh, well, I think that morals have gotten better insofar as the more, we're learning animals, right? I mean, and human beings are experts at applying knowledge. Yeah. And
it used to be a couple hundred years back that in this country, the morality of, the leadership was that slavery's okay. Now we have since learned that, well, no, it's not quite right. And, that's something that should not happen.
In the White House with an intern.
Well, we're learning.
Well, I don't know that I wouldn't call that okay. I mean, I know a lot of people didn't call that okay. Yeah. It's interesting how a lot of, you can say it's okay to use forged documents as your basis for going into war. I mean, at what point people have this interesting way of compartmentalizing their morals and saying, okay, well, this guy did this really bad thing, but I still like the way he does his job. Or I still like, the way he presents himself publicly. And so I found that people do have this interesting way of deciding not to be bothered by things they don't want to be bothered by. It's all a learning process. Even after slavery, it was just half a century ago, 50 years ago, that racial segregation was thought to be the right thing to do. The black people have their entrance into the building around the back. Yeah. And they don't get to eat in the same restaurants as everyone else. And that was considered to be the right thing to do. And, it took the whole civil rights movement to say, no, this isn't right. This isn't fair it's not a moral good to take people.
We have since learned that everybody is a little bit better off by not caring what color they are.
Yeah.
And just realizing that, hey, everybody can do a job just like everybody else can.
Yeah. I mean, it became better. It became obvious that, again, in the interest of promoting the spirit of cooperation and getting along with everyone in society, one way that you don't do that is say, okay, we'll split everybody along either belief lines or skin color lines or heritage lines or your ethnicity lines, and say, all right, well, now we all have to have a rigid separation of each other. And that was and that was well over 100 years after slavery was abolished. You still had that as being considered morally right, and now today it's morally wrong. And I think that we're going to adapt and have different ideas about different things 50 years and 100 years
Chances are, if you look back on our society and how we live today, in 100 years from now, you're going to find, they're going to look back on us and say, that was kind of weird. They did some strange things.
So you think things are getting better, but they're not devolving?
Overall, I think that people are learning. I think that people still do plenty of bad stuff. And I think that the fact that today we still have cultures like, we still have people like Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein and Kim Jong-il. You have dictators and you have terrorists who feel that they're, chosen by God or whatever to do this, to wage holy war against a bunch of innocent people and what have you. The fact that folks like that still exist indicates to me that there are still pockets of culture where we've got a long way to go. But we're going that way. And who knows? I mean, it's not to say 100 and 200 years from now we will have abolished dictatorships or we will have eradicated. We never will. I mean, there's always going to be somebody who's a loose cannon who doesn't want to fit in with everyone else and who wants to think that they're above it all. But on the whole, I do think, on balance, that humanity is much better off today than it was 100 years ago, 200, 300, 400, 500, 1,000 years ago in terms of just how human beings get along with one another. Yeah. So I do think that. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you. That's finished it.
Okay. All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah.
So,
does that make sense? Off base?
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's definitely a learning experience.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, I hear quite often as a sales pitch from preachers and evangelists and what have you, that we all need Christianity now because the world is in this unprecedented state of moral depravity and that we've never seen before. Well, hogwash, right? I mean, it's just not true. There's still a lot. I mean, they'll pick like one horrible crime that's very high profile and say this is a...
Look at the school shootings.
Well, okay, not even the school shootings, but like last summer, there were all the child kidnapping things that going on, right? Not just Elizabeth Smart, whom they found, but there were like the two little girls in California that got killed. Okay, and then there was the summer of girls being kidnapped last year. And I heard some religious leaders saying, "See, this is a sign that society is going all to hell in a handbasket, and it's just all a mess, and it's irredeemable." And I mean, it's like, no, it's not. First off, what happened? I mean, if culture as a whole was so depraved that this is the end result, okay, you would not have had the situation of the minute like some little child disappears somewhere, entire neighborhoods are scouring the countryside, with bloodhounds and dogs and sticks and getting on jeeps and horses.
Yeah, trying to find her.
You wouldn't have Amber Alerts. You wouldn't have, people, if society were as depraved as these ministers who are trying to be alarmist.
Care.
Nobody go, kidnapped child, big deal. That would be what everything was like. Okay, but it's not like that. The fact that that there are such forceful, angry responses and this movement to get results and to stamp this kind of stuff out indicates no, society's just fine. What you have is a case of one freak. Did a bad thing, and that's what's and because it's so high profile, because of news and the internet, bad news travels fast.
Exactly.
And the appearance can be given that, oh no, it's all it's all coming apart. Well, it's not.
There are a lot of predictions in the Bible that in the end times you will get increased floods and volcanoes and all these terrible disasters.
Yeah.
Well, there's no more happening today than there was 300 years ago. We just know about it a lot better.
Yeah.
We have graphic pictures on CNN of an earthquake in Ireland or whatever.
That's only been happening for about a century now. It's only been about 100 years that human beings have had the ability of very fast or even instant global communication.
Yeah. I mean, now we've got like say instant. You can turn on CNN and see pictures of what's going on. 50 years ago, even you could read about it in the newspaper, but you may not really see it all that much. So you kind of hear, ooh, earthquake.
Yeah, and if you're living in some outlying area, if you're living in a rural...
Yeah, you don't even hear about it.
Yeah, you'd have people who would never travel 50 miles away from where they were born their entire lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah,
maybe on a
no more is happening. We just know about it.
Log on to the wireless web, and there you are. So it's a change. Yeah. All right, Manda is on line 3. Let's see what she has to say. Hey.
Hey, happy Sunday.
Thank you.
I was just wanting to comment on a couple of things. Somebody called into the show and said they were asking about our education as atheists. I'm an atheist. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I read is texts written by the Greeks 2,500 years ago, early atheists. Mm-hmm. And the things they wrote still hold up today, by and large. You can read their addresses against putting statues to religion, and they're completely relevant to what religion gets forced on the public today. Right. But I think that back then there were different optimums. Like, I'm playing in a role-playing game that's a medieval fantasy, and we have to bend history to make it a viable game for modern people, because back then there were no city guards, there was no police force, there was no forensics. The Sherlock Holmes, logic kind of thing has only been around for so many years. Mm-hmm. And to live with a reliance on police as the source of punishment and the source of law enforcement is a big cultural change. Yeah. I mean, I have great sympathy for people back then who told each other boogeyman stories, and essentially people in communities had to breathe down each other's necks. Mm-hmm. People back then had to be very, very vigilant of each other. We've never had this much individual freedom, this much community freedom. To live like they did back then, they had to control each other very strongly. And I think that around the 18th century, you see a really big breakdown when people mimetically can't help but question. And there's a kind of a double standard right now in our society. We're in transition where they look at superstition as good for the other guy. I hear this very commonly where someone says, well, I'm not religious myself, but I see how everybody else should have it.
Yeah.
You hear that a lot?
Yeah, I hear that a lot. And I think that's a superstition.
Yeah, that's weird. That's like, this idea of, it's a way of looking down on other people, right? It's like, oh, well, I'm too good for that, but I can see how, some dummy.
Everybody else would need it.
Yeah. So it is a way of, that's kind of a self-aggrandizing statement on the part of the person who's making it.
Well, it's a very cynical attitude for our transition culture. Mm-hmm. We tend to think little things like people make rules for themselves. They make exceptions for themselves and rules for others. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I think the previous caller brought that up with. We were talking about the behavior of our presidents, for the last few terms, and how there was here's President Clinton committing adultery in the Oval Office, but he still had this whole flurry of supporters who just decided, well, that's okay because I still like what he's doing with the economy or whatever. And you still have, and then you have, people who will turn a blind eye to what Reagan, the improprieties, whatever, of the Reagan administration and the two Bush administrations and the Johnson and the Kennedy. And what Kennedy is another perfect case of a guy who had Marilyn Monroe coming in and out of the White House. And, there are certain things that if people don't want to be morally troubled by them, they won't be, and they'll make some justification for it on the meta scale.
Well, maybe there is a need in our public education system for ethics for living that are just completely independent of religion.
Oh, you'll never get that. I mean,
well,
the fundamentalists will say you're preaching the religion of secular humanism.
Well, this is the resistance you get in any transition culture. When there was a transition from monarchy to democracy, people said, "Oh, you'll never get it so most people are literate. You'll never get it so most people have access to accurate information about what happens in other countries."
Yeah.
And I think that the key to us changing over is to demand for yourself a right to accuracy, a right to accurate information about the cosmology. There isn't a God living on top of a mountain hurling thunderbolts.
a right to accuracy about what goes on in other countries? You know, are there real stockpiles of secret weapons, or are these folks with box cutters throwing shoes really, you know, just sitting ducks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We don't know, and we should demand accuracy.
And it's so hard to get to because, of course, everyone has, you know, all of the, you know, the news reportage that we have is filtered through some sort of bias. Certainly, you know, the editorialism is all about bias. So it is very difficult in many cases where, you know, especially in parts of the world where turmoil reigns, to get that kind of, you know, strict accuracy that you want.
Well,
You know?
I guess
Because the flow of information is controlled by people who have like these agendas and what
But
have
there are
you.
many of those flows. Like you can watch Canada News or you can watch BBC News and get another view on it. And those Canada News and BBC News are very different from CNN and Fox.
Well, that's true. That's true. But then, of course, now you're putting a real, you know, most people don't want to do that kind of work, though, which is unfortunate. You're talking about, okay, let's get news and information from a jillion different sources, and then through all of that, let's kind of come up with our own filters.
Well, we haven't put in the ethic of your responsibility for biting off a chunk of finding out what's true.
Yeah. And that comes from, again, people being just really willing to trust authority.
Yeah.
And that gets us back to what the religion, especially religious monotheism like Christianity and Islam, is about, right? It's all about just, here's the authority figure telling you the way things are, believe it.
That's one sect of Islam.
Yeah.
The Shia sect is imam-based. It's based on appointed messiahs. How do you know they're a messiah? Well, a lot of people seem to be following them, so they're probably a messiah.
That's still a form of authoritarian belief.
That's one form of Islam. Many people in Islam are very individualistic. They have a personal relationship, you know, personal relationship to God. It's not authority-based.
Like fundamentalist Christianity. They say it's about a personal relationship to God. But when you...
There's lots of kind of New Age Christians who have a personal Jesus and feel that it's not even a supernatural force, it's an abstract concept, and they're very, very close to humanism.
Yeah, but I still think that if you kind of peel all the layers back at the end, you'll come down to this belief, not necessarily in a strict authoritarian God like you know that Pat Robertson or D. James Kennedy would promote, but still this idea that in the end there is this authority figure, this paternal figure, this deity figure that in the end the buck stops with him and he takes care of me and I'm okay.
Yeah. Whenever I see something like the OJ case on television trying to erode trust, that's well-deserved trust in the legal system, but making a big deal out of a very nebulous area, you know, that annoys me, that makes me worry that the legal system that we have, that we depend on, isn't getting its due.
Well, our system is far from perfect. I mean, it does have problems. It's probably one of the better systems out there, I would argue. But yes, it's certainly not perfect, and it's easy to find the faults in the system and harp on them. And
or
not,
exploit them. Exploit them to achieve what you're trying to... Whatever you're...
And not realize all the good that has come from it and the things that have worked out. Yeah, no system is perfect. Things mess up.
Well,
it happens.
Think that, the checks and balances on law enforcement are only... We're only seeing glimmers of people's understanding. I can't imagine... I can't imagine the people 2,500 years ago putting up with things like Homeland Security. They would know better. They would know that the price to pay is too steep when there's search and seizure without a warrant in your house.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, times change, and you know, enough people are terrified of another terrorist attack that they may very well be willing to give up some freedoms that they took for granted, and then not realize maybe until it's too late that they've given up too much.
Well, that's why I consider these the desperate death throes of an authoritarian, religion-based outlook.
Well, you know, I wish you were right. I think that people have been predicting the demise of that kind of thing. But I think that in a sense, maybe there is something in human nature, especially when people haven't been all that well educated and brought up to think that in the end, this really is what you need. You need this big parent. You need this authority figure. And I hope it's not true, but I worry that some sort of authoritarian religion may be with us yet for a few centuries to come.
Could be.
I hope not. But it's thanks for all your input, man. And we're going to go ahead and go to our next caller now. But thanks a lot. Some interesting food for thought.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey, you take care. All right.
And now we have sound like we're in a church.
Yeah, I know. I kind of... Okay, well, who's next? 3 or 2? I'm going to go to... line 2 is Damien. Hey, thanks for holding. Hello? Okay.
Goodbye.
I think we lost that person. Okay, then Jeanette is... I think that's correct. On line 3. Hi, you're on the air.
Hi.
Sorry to keep you waiting so long.
That's all right. I enjoyed listening to y'all talking.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
I just want to know, do y'all just not believe in calling, like, what everything comes from God? Or do y'all believe that there was, did I hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the phones have been doing this badly off and on for the last few weeks. They have a new phone system here. We've had it a little better under control today, but it's creating this. Sometimes it creates this weird sound distortion through the phone. So just go ahead and talk, and I'm sure we'll understand you.
Okay, I believe in love. I believe everything is created from love. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you know, when I watched y'all one time, y'all sent out love rings, and I heard y'all say atheists, and I see y'all send out love rings, and I go, y'all aren't atheists. I go, maybe
you don't think atheists are capable of love?
Well, see, that's just it. I believe God is love.
Well, we think that love is
love is a word that's out there. It stands on its own.
Hang on. Let me pin you down on a little more detail on that.
Okay.
Okay. Like, first off, what is... just go ahead and give me in as detailed a way as you can what you think the emotion of love is and what it's for and what it does for us.
Okay, I think it's more than a mere emotion. I think it just shows up in us as an emotion. I believe that love is like the essence of all existence.
Okay.
So you think it's like a... I hesitate to say physical, but I mean there's some kind of energy, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but past that, it's almost divine.
Okay.
Well, it is divine. It's divine energy, and that's what everything came to be out of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I understand. I know a lot of people who make those kinds of statements because. And I think it's because love is quite often so powerful and so forceful in emotion that, much more so than, some others you might feel.
Than apathy.
That people want to ascribe something more that's beyond the human experience to it. And I think, my opinion is, that when people do that, I think that they're sort of selling short the experience of being human. See, I think it's enough... See, if I say, if I look at love as I do, as an emotional state,
well, it is that also.
To me, that's enough. I mean, to me, it's wonderful enough that it is part of the human experience that we are capable of sharing this kind of intimacy, emotionally and otherwise, with one another. With you can have one sort of love with your family. You can have a different kind of love for your country, or you can love your career or your job, and that's a completely different definition of that. But I think that what you're describing is just all different aspects of the human experience, and I've never felt the need to ascribe any kind of supernatural significance or paranormal or a spiritual, if you will, significance to that in order to be able to appreciate just that it's a nice thing.
So you're grateful.
No. I mean, it's enough for it to be, I mean, that, and my curiosity is why isn't that, what do you feel about just the basic human experience is so lacking that you feel a compulsion to ascribe more like spiritual or supernatural aspects to like an emotional state like love in order to make it significant for you? Why is that? Why do you think that's necessary?
I don't feel like it's necessary. It's just in me to feel like that because, I was raised Catholic, and I was indoctrinated with Christianity. But in me, my own personal beliefs, before I was even taught what to believe, I believe that we came back again.
Okay.
And I believe that we have pre-existence and that we are eternal. Without being taught this as a child growing up, I had just my own belief system, and I appreciate that, and I'm not going to let go of it. I don't know if I had to make it up or whatever, but I appreciate that. I don't know if it's creativity. I don't know what it is, but I just believe that God is love, and everything comes from that, and everything is that, and everything will return to that.
Well, I mean, you'd understand from our perspective, right? I mean, individuals have beliefs that are, by their very nature, they're the kind of beliefs that they're not verifiable. They're just things that people feel in their... But again, to me, see, I just see that as another reflection of the emotional experience. I mean, it sounds, for a lot of people, I think it sounds maybe unromantic. Maybe, in a sense, it sounds like you're stripping away the magic of existence by saying, oh, well, it's all just chemical reactions and what have you and whatnot. But I don't think it is.
No, it's a manifestation of what always was.
Well, see, again, I mean, that remark to me doesn't really say a whole lot. I mean, love is a manifestation of what always was. I don't even know what that means. See, that's a personal...
You know deep down inside.
Well, no, I don't. I mean, how do you know what I know? I mean, all I know is when you make statements like that, right? You've come up with a personal worldview that is, unique to your experience, and that's how you choose to express these things. Okay. We don't experience, we don't have our experience of life in that way.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that if you just look at something from a purely naturalistic standpoint, that it doesn't have significance.
Well, culturally, also, I am African American, so I don't know if that plays a part in it or whatever. But I don't know.
I mean, people, live their lives informed by their culture. And look, hey, if you're, it sounds like the way you believe about things, gives you a certain degree of fulfillment. We're not here to tell you don't believe that way.
Okay.
But we're just here to explain to you, why we don't have those kinds of supernatural and spiritual beliefs, and why we don't think they're really necessary for a person to have a fulfilled life, both intellectually and emotionally. So that's what we're here to do. Is we're not here to deconvert folks like you, but we're here to explain sort of the secular naturalist materialist outlook on life in a way that folks can understand it.
That folks can understand it.
Yeah.
And also, there's a couple other things with that too that are really quick. I've heard a lot of times people say things like, it all comes from God, or it all comes from love, or whatever.
Yeah.
And typically, what you think of when you see things like that is, the emotion of love. Yeah. Where does that come from? Well, it's God. Where do you, sunsets, puppy dogs, beautiful flowers. What about Ebola? What about disease? What about volcanoes? Where do they come from? What?
Yeah. I mean, see, the thing is, looking at nature, you have to...
That's good, because I asked that same question, because I got angry when I was younger, because my mother died when I was 10. Yeah. And I said, how does a loving God take a mother away from a 10-year-old, knowing I had no one else to take care of her? So I got angry for a long time. And then I realized, hey, look, things aren't perfect. And yes, there is a supreme being, but to me, things aren't happening the way I want them to. But my mother was also sick, and now she's at home or at peace or at rest and returned back to where we all come from. So I had to finally come to grips with, look, we're not going to live forever here.
Yeah. But there are two ways to go about that. One, it's a God who can think and knows things and consciously is sort of like a really powerful person.
A conscious being.
Yeah. You can argue against that. I mean, again, why do bad things happen? If he has the power to stop them, why does he let them happen?
I mean, it's
really only temporary to us, and where we're coming from.
Yeah, but go back further.
Okay, but the point of view that we come from, it looks like horrible, terrible, terrible. But believe it or not, in the very, very end, we're all going to see where everything adds up.
See, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's any sort of valid way to justify the wrongs in life. I mean, to say that in the end, there's some sort of divine settling of accounts that makes all the bad stuff okay, I don't think makes it okay. Yeah. I mean, if a father beats his child, right, and then later on he feels bad about it and he buys his child some ice cream, okay, the ice cream doesn't erase from history the fact that the child was beaten. Okay, it was still a bad thing that happened. And to say that in the end, it will all be well because stuff will. I think to me that sounds like let's just stop. Let's just not take responsibility for the world we're in and the future we're in to try to fix stuff.
Oh no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we need to take responsibility because there is things like Ebola and AIDS and SARS and stuff like that. It's a chance for us and for scientists and medical doctors to create cures to stop stuff like that from keep on occurring. One day there's going to be a life where there will not be a whole bunch of diseases and destruction and
but why shouldn't that be like that now?
We're doing this to ourselves.
But why shouldn't that be like
God
that
isn't
now?
doing it. We're not getting in touch with
He's
our own
allowing it to
needs.
happen.
Well, again, first off,
Yes, he allows us because we have our own choice. He gave us our own choice.
Well, no, we didn't choose Ebola.
yeah, I mean, you're
No, I'm not Ebola. I'm talking about war. But
Oh, okay,
we don't know if we didn't choose Ebola.
Well, we don't
know if that's not a biological thing. We don't know if that's a biological weapon.
So here's the thing, though. We are talking about it. We are talking about Ebola, and we're talking about AIDS. I mean, a baby
But I
born...
heard that could be biological weaponry.
Well, I don't know that there's any evidence of that. I think that, though, but
y'all are denying that, but it's possible. Can you just erase it totally?
Okay,
But
fine.
It's not possible?
Okay,
Well-
earthquakes then.
yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Earthquakes, yeah.
But even if it were a biological weapon, right? I mean, a baby born to a mother with AIDS doesn't choose to have AIDS. Okay.
sometimes they
So
don't
there are
get
a lot of people, but many of them do, and a lot of bad
But
things.
many of them don't.
The simple fact of the matter is that there are people out there who suffer bad things that they really don't deserve.
And it's innocent, yes.
Yeah, and in that regard, I find I have a hard time reconciling that reality with the idea of an omnibenevolent, all-powerful God who has everyone's best
can I
interest
tell
at
you
heart.
something? That's the
I have a very easy time reconciling it with we're just here in this natural universe, and stuff happens sometimes that we don't have any control over, but we have to at least try to make the best for ourselves.
Yeah, we do have to try and make the best for ourselves. So because of that love that we have within ourselves, that came from eternity.
See, we don't think it. We think
existence.
Yeah.
We have to reach out to each other. Like when we see the things that are happening that aren't supposed to happen, we need to go stop them. Or we need to start making progress to make sure it doesn't keep on happening.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that what you're saying is that's kind of a learning experience.
Yes.
Bad things happen, and so we learn it from it and we get better.
Yes.
And that-
Yes, but who didn't
now,
know?
wait a second.
Okay,
the
go
problem with these things is we usually accept that idea because as humans, we are limited in our power.
Right.
You know, I can't just reach inside of somebody and pull out a tumor and say, oh, there you go, you're healed now. We have to go through bad things like surgery and cutting somebody open with a knife to cure them. That in the short term, that's a bad thing. We normally don't like cutting people up. But we go through that because it'll make them better.
Okay.
Because we have limited power.
Yeah.
If we could just snap our fingers and heal everybody, we would. God or love or whatever,
Sometimes it does happen like that.
if it's conscious, if this force is conscious, it has the power to just snap its fingers and everything is fixed. It doesn't do that.
I hate to say this, but okay. You know, one time I was talking with my boss, and we were talking about evolution one time, right? And he said, well, I don't believe that God exists anymore. And he was 62 years old. And he said, because if there was a kind, loving God, why would we have to go through thousands of years of evolution? He would just snap his finger, like he said, and it would happen. I said, well, guess what? God always was, God always will be, and to us, it looks like thousands and thousands of years, but to him, it is a snap of a finger.
But see, that's the thing, though. What you've done with God, what you've done with God is you have come up with this all-purpose answer for every single question that you might have to have about life. It's very easy for you. If a mystery about life or some strange injustice about life happens, it's either God did it, God wanted it this way, God's trying to teach us a lesson, God this, God that. You have God is the all-purpose answer.
And what can I do to help? How can I be his helping hand? How can I help society?
Okay.
I'm limited. I have friends that are limited, but all of us together, we're not limited.
Yeah. But again,
ourselves, we are limited, but when we all get together, we're not limited.
Yeah, but we take the view that one doesn't need a divine belief in order to have this sense of community responsibility to one another.
You don't.
But anyway, I think we're going to go ahead and go on to our next caller.
Okay.
But we appreciate your input and your feedback, and call us back anytime. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
See, again, it's getting back to she had mentioned what I was going to say when you were in the. Didn't mean to interrupt you there, but no, I mean I shouldn't have. It was when I was saying about learning lessons and things like that.
Yeah.
Sure, I've heard a lot of Christians make that argument. Well, of course, life would be too easy if God just snapped his fingers and gave you everything you asked for. People have to learn. But my view is, before AIDS, before Ebola, before SARS, okay, who didn't know? There's these things that exist called diseases, and they can kill you if you don't get proper medical care. Yeah. I mean, for whom was that not a lesson that that the human race had not already learned about hygiene, taking care of yourself, proper health care, what have you? Okay, so people understand. I think the human race has an understanding of things like, here's what you've got to do to be healthy. Don't, diseases can kill you. There are illnesses out there. Okay.
Yeah.
We already had this, and yet still new diseases come.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
To me, this is just indicative. And, and SARS is evolving. Again, SARS is a thing you can look at. Again, if you doubt the reality of evolution, and just look at what's happening. It's already mutated into 2 new forms. Okay. It's evolution in action. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just, I understand, but at the same time, I understand how Jeanette, I've talked to a lot of people who think that way, and my view is, I don't think that, I don't understand why some folks need to ascribe supernaturalism or divinity or what have you to the human experience to make the human experience meaningful to them.
Yeah.
It seems like somewhere inside there's just something missing that they just can't get out of, I just like waking up in the morning and enjoying a day, whether it's sunny, whether it's rainy, getting out, doing your job, hanging out with friends, playing with your dog, what have you. Just the experience alone is not enough without saying, oh, well, but we all lived before and everything comes from,
and this whole thing
divinity
about learning lessons through hardship. Again, it's just a function that, we can't control. When you have a kid, you don't, and they're playing with a fork and they go to stick it in a light socket, you don't think, oh, well, he's going to learn. You realize that that's bad. You stop them.
Yeah. There's a preemptive quality to people learning about things.
The only times we allow people to go through bad things happening in order for them to learn is because we know for a fact that they can deal with it, and it would be harder to teach them this lesson than for them to learn it themselves.
But even then, I think you would try to teach them, beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, you try, but, it could be.
It's like all my friends who tell me, hey, we're getting married. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to tell you right now, but I know I can't stop you, and a lot of times they have to learn that lesson for themselves, and, 2 years later, they're like, It's like, I had to tell you.
And again, if you were God, you could have just put that knowledge in their head.
Here come the phone calls now. It's like old Martin talking about marriage again. But anyway, we're not here to analyze our callers, but it does seem to me that the people who, the more they insist upon needing this kind of divine aspect to life, it's like there's something just in life itself that isn't fulfilling enough.
Yeah.
And they have to have this kind of, there's got to be more. You hear religious people say this all the time. No, there's just got to be more out there. There's got to be more. There's got to be something. Well, I mean, why isn't this good enough for you?
Yeah.
Why isn't this good enough? So who knows? Maybe Cheryl can tell us. She's on line 2. Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're great. What's up?
Well, I just had a question. I'm thinking about how. Does it sound pretty robotic to you guys?
It's the phones. They go in and out. It's a weird new system.
Okay. Well, my question is, one of the things that I've noticed about religion and about spirituality is the sense of community, and how you talked a lot today about needing something more and needing that sense of connection. And I'm just watching your program and having some different friends and family members who are atheists. You guys have that same sense or need for community and that sense of belonging. And I'm just wondering, do you differentiate the need that you guys have as atheists from other religious groups? And how do you, is there a distinction there for you guys?
Yeah, I understand what you're asking. I think that human beings are just by their, just the kind of, we're social beings. And so I think that in that regard, control room, come on. I mean, I know you guys are fighting it, but I'm just going to keep talking.
I'm trying.
No, it's not what you're doing. It's our system.
Okay, anyway, there we go. That's better. Okay, people are social by just the sorts of creatures that we are. I mean, we do seek out company for one another. I think that the way, though, that religious people, I don't think the sense of community that they seek among other religious people, I don't think is necessarily fundamentally different than what, like, for example, we want to do with Atheist Community of Austin. Oh, well, we'd like to meet other people who think about things the same way we do. Or we want to meet people with similar interests. That's why people form bridge clubs and bowling leagues. And I think so in that regard, I think that the kind of fellowship that people seek when they get into a church, religious people seek when they get into a church environment, is quite similar to just that sense of wanting to connect with other people that the Atheist Community of Austin and other atheist groups around the country accomplish for atheists, which is just, I'd like to find people who are sort of on the same wavelength as I am and get together with them. And it's that social, there is that fulfillment that social interaction give people. So in fact, I know that there are some atheist groups that actually openly, they said they use what they call a church model for their groups, which is, and that is to say the way in which churches encourage getting together, having activities, having meetings, whether social events, having dinners, that sort of thing. The way that churches do it, some atheist groups and humanist groups do model themselves after that simply because as a way to put a social group together, it works. And so in that regard, I don't think there is too much of a difference. We just talk about other things, I guess, than church groups talk about. So yeah, I think that people in the final analysis really do kind of want many of the same things in life, which is that everybody wants peace and happiness and health for themselves and success, but at the same time you want to have good friends and you want to have just people in your life that sort of enhance that experience. I think that's basic to all cultures.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks for calling.
All right. Okay. I know. I actually didn't mean to chew the control room out. It's tough, I know. But it was working beautifully for like the first.
Yeah, and we did a test call before the show, and it was beautiful. But
on the whole, I think it's just there's just something in the guts of it that's some wires crossed or something. But Steve's been doing a great job. Okay, yes, Arid is next, so we're gonna see. Hey, you're on the air.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I don't know, it seems like you guys are saying, but that all the bad things in the world, if there is a God, he must be evil because of all the bad things that are going on. But I think all the evil in the world, all the bad in the world, what we perceive as being bad is the direct result of our actions, of our own actions, not because of anything God has done or himself. He's created us and he's blessed us with all the faculties that we need to make this life wherever we want it to be.
Okay. So,
and again, you can apply that to things like murder and theft, but what about earthquakes? No person ever caused an earthquake or, somehow inflicted that upon ourselves.
Yeah, typhoons.
Typhoons, hurricanes, Ebola.
I mean, what you've got is one response to the problem of man-made evil, but it doesn't address natural disasters.
Natural disasters. I mean, all these things that it kind of balances the world out. I mean, if nobody ever died, if nothing bad ever happened, I mean, we would be overpopulated and would create a whole slew of other problems.
So then you're saying
that would prove God.
So then you're saying, wait a minute, you're saying that God deliberately kills thousands of people in earthquakes in order to balance out the world's population?
No, that's not exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying, some of these things are beyond my understanding. I mean, other people might be able to explain it better. I'm just saying that because these things happen doesn't mean that God has done anything wrong or failed to do anything right.
Well, let me put a proposition to you. Did we lose him, or did we put him on hold? Okay. It sounds like you're still there. I can hear you, but they're still messing with the sound to try to get that feedback out. The proposition I have is that, if God is omniscient, that means he knows past, present, and future with complete certainty. If this is true, then when God created the earth, he created it with full foreknowledge of all the evils it would contain. Okay? That meant that either he intended for those evils to happen, or he had, which would be, and it pretty much amounts to the same thing, all of these evils that the world would contain were all part of his intent in how the world would settle into place, as it were, with human beings, the suffering wars and strife and famine and crimes and diseases and disasters. All of this was part of the plan when God originally created the world. If he had full foreknowledge of the entire future of the human race from beginning to end, and still created the world with all of this knowledge of all the evils the world would contain, he had that intent then to have those evils in there, which would make him responsible for them. Well, that's the proposition that yes,
I believe that God is the cause of all causes. Now, God's knowledge, I'm not going to say that he knows exactly what I'm going to do within the next 5 minutes. To say that would be to say that everything is predestined.
Okay,
I don't believe that everything is predestined.
Okay, so you don't accept predestination?
No, I don't.
Okay, so you understand then that throws a bunch of cold water on the concept of God's omniscience. Okay.
No, not necessarily.
Well, omniscience means to know everything, right? That means no limits to knowledge. Now, it seems to me that would include future knowledge. At least a lot of Christians tell me that God does know the future.
I'm not a Christian.
Okay.
I think God knows every scenario. You know, it's like if you choose this path, then this will happen. If you choose that path, that will happen.
Right.
You know, but He doesn't push us in either direction.
But if
left it up to us to choose which direction we want to go.
Right, but again, being omniscient, He would not only know all of the available options, and He would not necessarily push you towards one, but He would know all of the available options, including the one that you do end up taking.
Right.
So, again, this whole question of,
Yeah, but murder and all those bad things you're describing, that's not God's fault. That's something that we choose to do. God just doesn't fix it. I mean, it's just like a knife. I mean, a knife is not a bad thing in itself. You know, it has good uses and it can be used for evil as well.
Yes.
What do we choose to do with it? That's not God's fault. I can't, if I pick up a knife and stab someone, I can't say, well, God made me do it.
So assuming God is loving, He loves everybody. Why does He allow these bad things to happen? Is there a goal? Is there a point to it? And He allows thousands of people to die in all these horrible ways. Why does He do that?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I said, some of these things are beyond my knowledge. I don't understand everything.
Good. Well, then.
I mean, I don't think we were put here to live forever. I don't think we're meant to live forever. So it is necessary that some of us die in some ways or another. I mean, this earth, I believe that God created this earth in a way that it kind of it feeds itself. You know, one thing's waste is another thing's food. You know.
Yeah, but again, I don't think that you can make that analogy to something like some horrible pedophile kidnapping a child and then taking it out and murdering it.
That's our free will. That's our free will. If someone chooses to be that way, then...
But if you're the victim, right? If you're the victim, it's not your free will to choose to be murdered.
No, it's not.
So whose free will is more meaningful then? Is the bad guy's free will more special and more important than the victim's free will? That God says, oh, well, I can't stop this murder from happening even though I see it right in front of me. Even though I see this man with this big knife about to kill this 8-year-old child, I can't do anything about it because I don't want to interfere with free will. What about the child's free will? What about the parents' free will? They want to see their child back. Is the killer's free will more important than all those other people's free will?
I believe that all our wills are equally important.
Okay,
but that doesn't mean. That doesn't mean because one person decides to do something bad. I mean, it's not God's fault.
It's not God's fault, but again, this has to do with moral responsibility. Right. If you have God, who is an all-powerful being, who presumably is witnessing, murders taking place. I mean,
just like you said. I mean, but you only want to look at one aspect. Because some other callers, when I first started watching the show, brought up the fact that this world is not the end of everything.
So wait, so you're saying that it's a good... Are you implying that it's a good thing that pedophiles kill children because it sends them on to heaven or something?
No, I'm not saying that it's a good thing. All I'm saying is that it's not the end of it. I mean, in this world or in the next, that person who is killed, he's going to answer for his actions. He's going to answer for the wrongs that he's done.
But here's the thing, though. I don't care. I don't care about some future justice. Okay? I don't care about... But I know, what I care about are the horrible things happening now. I care about pedophiles right now kidnapping children and killing them. I care about terrorists driving truck bombs into buildings and blowing up people who don't want to be blown up. I care about the bad things happening right now.
Well,
I don't care about some supposed future justice.
These are things that men choose to do.
All right.
And God allows to happen.
Just like we make these problems and we have to figure out the answer to them.
Okay.
I mean, but that's us.
Yeah. Well, let me just create a scenario for you and get your opinion on it. Let's say let's say that you're walking down the street and some mugger jumps out and victimizes you, right? Okay. And so you're dealing with this guy and he's, got a big gun or something, and across the street you can see a person standing on the other sidewalk across the street with a cup of coffee.
Making a cop.
Just standing, not even a cop, just anyone, any person just standing there, and they're watching you, And they're just standing there with drinking a cup of coffee, and they're watching this take place. They're watching you being victimized by this individual. And, and you're like, help, help. And they're just standing there watching. Now, what do you think of that person? What kind of person do you think that is? Do you think that's a good person? They're not coming to help.
That person, that human being, could be afraid. There could be 1,000 reasons why that person doesn't.
There could be 1,000 reasons, but does that mean, you appreciate they're standing there and not at least rendering you assistance?
No.
I mean, okay, you don't appreciate that. Okay. My point of view is that what you are proposing, right? What you're trying to defend, okay? When you say that, well, it's all up to us, and we agree with personal responsibility, but when you throw in this all-powerful being into the mix that is standing there watching and capable of doing something and choosing not to, okay, to me that's no different than the person standing across the street casually sipping coffee while someone's being victimized. It's the same kind of thing. I think it's morally irresponsible. That's not a person that I would like. Okay, and so when you're defending God's inaction, that's the kind of behavior that you're defending. That's what we're trying to point out.
Well,
yeah.
No,
Say, look.
Just like. See, I've been a victim. I've been a victim of crime. I've been a victim of this society.
Yeah.
But,
and it's not good, and it's not right.
No, that's not good, and it's not right.
And
I was a victim of police brutality, and because I was a victim of police brutality, and I was being charged with assaulting a police officer. I spent 3 years in prison, and I spent, time on parole and everything.
Right. But I'm sorry that happened.
But out of that bad thing, many good things were born.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
And I'm not saying, right, I'm not saying that you didn't take good responsibility for yourself, and I'm sorry that happened to you, and I'm sorry that you learned, valuable things about it that you've been able to apply to your life. But in a sense, I'm just trying to say, okay, you did that. You made that decision, and what I'm trying to say is that I would think that having been a victim of this kind of police brutality and this sort of authoritarian violence, you should probably question authoritarian ideas much more than defending them. And to me, a God who does a bad thing, even through inaction, is no different than a cop who would do a bad thing through inaction. But just think about that. Call us back next week if you want and debate with us some more. But we're out of time now, okay? So we appreciate your call, and we're going to go ahead and let you go, man. But thanks a bunch, okay? Take care. Thanks. Hey, no, you're welcome. And I'm afraid we're not going to get to our last caller, but Tony, who's on the line waiting because we're out of time, TV at atheist-community.org is our viewer email address. If you want to email us, send us big long letters and straightening us out and all that, well, please do. And in the last couple minutes, I just wanted to just a little amusement. We'll end on a lighter note, but we're done for today. We'll be back next Sunday at 4:30. Check this out. I found this product was left behind. I don't want to steal Arlo Pignati's thunder, but a friend of mine left this behind. She was crashing with me for a little while. This soap. This is a liquid soap. And it's remarkable because
I can get a close-up on this,
the creator of this, it's called Dr. Bronner's Magic Soaps. And it's an 18-in-1 hemp type soap. And they're in these bottles. Now, do you see all this microscopic writing all around the sides? Okay, you think that's like,
look at the big bottle.
That's FDA stuff. Oh, look, there's a big one, right? You see all this, look, God our eternal Father, you can read that. All of this writing, and look how comprehensive it is. I mean, it's huge. It's all over. This is all this bizarre person's religious ravings, which are really, really interesting. It's not even coherent English. You have self-disciplined hard work is the skeleton of your intellect, the key to freedom, the basis of unity. Without it, even the most brilliant head remains ineffective, small. And he likes to, and it just goes on and on and on. But what you have here is a guy who's come up with a way to market his crackpot literature on his products.
And he's also got some
here's another one.
Apparently good friends. Full Truth, God's Law Shall Make You Free by Geoffrey Chaucer and Soapmaker Bronner.
Yeah, he's rewritten all of these old poems and in his own letter and his own writing. And this is just very, very entertaining stuff.
There's just mountains of it.
Yeah, it just goes all around this bottle. So this I just thought might be something that our pal Arlo Pignati might be amused by, just in terms of he collects all this sort of religious paraphernalia. So Dr. Bronner's Magic Soaps, the all-eternal fatherly one.
It's not animal tested, 100% vegan.
Yeah. It's really harsh soap. Smells nice, but it's really harsh stuff. So anyway, many scents to choose from. Thank you for joining us again, and there go our love rings out to Austin. Our perfectly natural love going out to you. We're here again every Sunday, 4:30. Nonprofits start next Saturday at 2 at atheistnetwork.com. Thank you, Theists. We don't hate you. We just think you're wrong. Bye-bye.